We're going to explore the full function of the upper quadrant. And your practice time, I would like for you to some extent, not try to do good body work. Okay? Yeah, isn't that nice? Instead, think of this as learning, experimenting, and exploring. Okay? And this should all be familiar to you, but we're going to add layers to it, and it stays being deep to me, so it'll still be deep to you, even if you seem like you've done it something like it before. Okay, so full function of the upper quadrant can be explored in both supine and side-lying positions. There is also some upper quadrant work that can be done in what I call half frog, which is prone with the arm out and leg out and head turned to the side, no face cradle. We're not going to do that today. Last week we did, worked on the arm and saw some range of motion in the arm. I'm going to include that and add a lot to it, and I'm going to add concepts. I chose Maureen to be on the table for two reasons: so that everybody could see, and because I feel like her functional range of motion is probably going to be pretty easy to find. And as a result of that, it's easier to see full range of motion in the upper quadrant in somebody who I have, who understands the movement, and I have less work to do. But we will be able to find some work to do with Maureen. And one of your explorations is going to be to figure out what kind of work your client is doing. Okay? So we have talked about hypertonicity. That's tension. That's where the muscle is held in extra tone. Okay? That is a signal from the brain. That is a signal which is autonomic. Okay? Means it's not like I'm thinking about all of my muscle tone all the time, right? But it's involuntary muscles. Okay, so the muscle tone that's in her arm and upper quadrant, all those muscles are voluntary muscles. They're under her conscious control. So we can take a tone signal from the autonomic nervous system and bring it into conscious awareness and give the brain the option of turning it on or off. So we bring an unconscious contraction to conscious awareness, and then the brain decides what it wants to do with it, and the person decides what they want to do with it. You all do that when you're trying to relax when you're getting a massage, right? There's also a different kind of muscle contraction. I'm not sure how likely we are to see it very much on Maureen, and I might actually choose after this to do a short demonstration on somebody else so that we can see the different kind of muscle contraction. And that is a habituated neuromuscular response. Okay? So you probably all, many of you encountered this when you were doing your practice last week. Excuse me. That's on video. And that is that when you move somebody, then they move. As in, if I move her arm, she helps me move her arm. Or when I'm moving her arm, she moves her neck. Okay? So that is where, does anybody not know what the heck I'm talking about right now? You all saw that to some extent or another, or have felt it. Okay. So that's also a muscle contraction, and it's also not on purpose muscle contraction. Like muscle tone is a not on purpose muscle contraction of a voluntary muscle, a habitual neuromuscular response is a not on purpose contraction of a voluntary muscle. And so we can take that and also make it on purpose or turn off the accidental contraction using, the client can do it using their mind. So a lot of the first information that I get here, and we choose forearms for these practice sessions because they usually have some hypertonicity and they usually have some habituated neuromuscular responses. Okay, so it's easy to find both kinds of contraction in forearms and in the whole arm neck region. That's where the most collection of these things are. It's easiest to investigate them. And that's where we get most of our complaint areas on clients too. So here I'm feeling she has some, what's the difference between a strong forearm and hypertonic forearm? Hard to know except for by experience. Yeah. First of all, yeah, and this is, it's got muscles in it. She's a massage therapist. It's density and, your experience of tension, and also is it softening as I squish it. So this muscle is distinctly softening as I squish it. What does that tell me? It's tone. No, strong is strong.
So hypertonic would stay?
Hypertonic, if it likes what I'm doing, is going to soften.
Okay, so strong will change.
Strong is just strong. It's just, yeah? A lot of times people get so preoccupied with erectors, and then I go and massage them and I'm like, yeah, those are erectors. What are you trying to do? Turn them into something else? They're just strong muscles. So here, and there's places where, she responds more up here and less down here. Like that's hypertonic but not changing as much. Up here she was way more hypertonic when I started, and now, there's another kind of contraction that I should mention. So there's hypertonic, which is kind of hard to change at first on purpose. But then when you're meditating, I do this all the time when I'm meditating, and I assume that everybody else does too. I'm doing my relaxing meditation, right? And I think I'm relaxing. And then all of a sudden I realize, I wasn't relaxing at all. Yeah? Do you have that?
We had that happen in last week when I was working on Sarah. But I thought maybe it was the other thing that came up. But I was lifting her arm, and her arm was and I wasn't even sure if it was, I don't know, it was weird. It was when she was holding it there, and she all of a sudden realized it was really, she was whoa. She just was holding it there.
Do you need a blanket?
Not realizing she was holding it.
So if you were moving her and that was happening, that's a habituated neuromuscular response because it's a response to something being done to you or your joint moving. But if you're just laying there, it's a very similar brain activity going on, except for that you're doing it all by yourself. Yeah? So you're laying there and you're thinking, I'm relaxed. Oh, no, I wasn't relaxed at all. Okay? So that's another kind of contraction that we're likely to find. I think that's what I found up here. It was when I started and I was doing my palpation up on her arm here, it was quite firm. And then I went down here and I came back and it's not firm at all there anymore. So she just figured out how to relax it. So that's also neuromuscular. It's just not a response. It's not a habituated neuromuscular response. It's just a neuromuscular habit, an expression of her state of mind, right? That's what it is. And and then your mind goes, I don't need to have that state anymore, and then your muscle relaxes. Okay, so that's part one. That's easy. We did that already. And I learned some things from her arm just then that you're likely to learn from your client's arm. Okay? Then we're going to look at the movement. Okay? And so what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to just see where is there free range of motion at the distal radial ulnar joint. And what I mean by free range of motion is, can you sense the quality of ease and flop? Right? Can you tell that I'm not pushing against any of her resistance? There's resistance right here. Okay? That's the end of her free range of motion. Ink, ink, resistance. Okay, so I'm just going to see what her free range of motion in supination of her distal radial ulnar joint is. And my hand contact is part of that communication, right? So if I'm too light, I'm not going to get anything, right? And if I'm too firm, I'm going to stabilize the joint. So I'm really treating it like it rolls, yeah? And I'm talking to that radius. Can you see my hands rolling the radius in the way that it rolls? She just made a breath, and now her radius rolls differently. So her range of motion changed. Got it? A lot of times when you're practicing, one of the things that you do as students is, I'll demonstrate. Yeah? It's like you're trying to be so attentive that you're missing the point. Okay? So it's, where is the real free, you're annoying when you're exploring free range of motion in somebody whose joint is free, but you're not really exploring their freedom. Okay? But I know something about this joint, so I can do fun little things, like I can stabilize the ulna and rotate the radius around it, and really find what that free range of motion is. So can you see that the quality has changed since I started working on her? And she's can you imagine being her? She's not concentrating on relaxing just in the place where I'm touching. She's relaxing her whole entire, at least, upper quadrant as I go. Okay, so then distal radial ulnar joint comes next. And in her relaxation, she changed the range of motion in her distal radial ulnar joint by turning off that hypertone signal, yeah? Changing her attitude, getting more information. So now I can roll her distal radial ulnar joint. Okay? Now what's happening at her glenohumeral joint when I roll her distal radial ulnar joint? Yeah, it's moving in its free range of motion, but you'll notice that I'm doing a fairly good job of keeping it mostly in the glenohumeral joint, right? There are a couple of ways that you can move the glenohumeral joint, but this is my favorite and it's the easiest, and that's just an underhanded, using the tissue drag of the triceps to push the triceps one direction, pull the triceps another. That is actually a little bit of a Golgi tendon stimulation that helps to relax the, or if you want to do both sides, you can kind of relate with the biceps and the triceps. So spinning the muscles over the bone.
Can you tell me again, explain why that's a Golgi tendon?
Because when I do this, I'm drawing the triceps into length.
Oh, okay.
I'm pulling it a little bit. Usually the thing that restricts the glenohumeral joint is in the front line, in the pec. So if I draw length into the triceps, it's going to deactivate the pec. Golgi tendon organ stimulation deactivates the antagonist. I'm going to add these layers of language on until it doesn't sound complicated anymore. Okay, so when I'm going this way, I'm drawing length into the pec, so my emphasis is on the triceps. And when I'm going this way, I'm drawing length into the rotator cuff, so my emphasis is on the biceps. So I'm lengthening the back, and so I'm stimulating the front. And the two-handed rotation looks like this. That attitude toward touch greatly increases her ability to allow free range of motion in her glenohumeral joint. Yeah? Okay, that's the easy part usually. It gets neuromuscularly more complicated as soon as we move to the next joint. What's the next joints? And then it's not technically a joint, but we relate it as such. It is the scapulothoracic, the relation in all the muscles that connect the scapula to the neck and the thorax and the arm. Okay, so in supine, this is the simplest scapulothoracic movement. Okay, so as soon as we get to about here, it's the end of the range of motion where the humerus hits the acromion, and then from that point forward, it's scapular movement. Okay, so here there's a strong tendency on both the receiver side and the giver side to go into a stretch. That's a habit that we have, both the givers and the receivers, to have that habit. So we're going to avoid that by really being clear about free and easy range of motion. So my quality of touch is, I'm overemphasizing my quality of touch here as to demonstrate the free and easy range of motion. Can you see that? So one of my favorite Far Side jokes is the picture of the boneless chicken ranch, where there's just all these chickens laying around. Okay, and I always think about that joke when I'm doing this kind of work. It's like floppy, floppy, boneless chickens. Yes? Yeah? Huh? A puddle, or cats, sleeping cats. Yes? Okay, so I chose Maureen because it would be easy, and we're distinctly missing one thing. What do you think is missing from this demonstration?
Resistance, or
She's two things. Yes, you're right. She's not really resisting me very much, and she's not neuromuscularly activating very much. Right? There's a reason, though. How many neuromuscular activations are you whacking with your whack-a-mole before they actually pop up? How many signals are you turning off as we go along? A lot. Do you know what I mean? I move her arm. She wants to do the stuff, right? But she's going. She's turning them off, turning off her response to move her arm.
Which takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, I think it's kind of not that common, actually. I mean, like, I just gave a massage yesterday,
Received a lot of body
where it was just, doing that, it was like, there was a lot of, like, I wasn't sure how I was going to get the arm to be comfortable.
Exactly. So that's what's missing from this demonstration. Now the client is doing all of that inside, and that's basically what we're trying to teach our clients when we're doing neuromuscular body work, okay?
And the whack-a-mole is like the purpose of what you're doing.
Yes. Every time you find the signal consciously and turn it off, you've learned something. Big and important, actually. And you're deeply facilitating relaxation in your body, not just in your arm. Okay, so for a client who, and this is why I might need to demonstrate, is there anybody who thinks that when I move your arm you're going to be like a little bit more complicated?
Well, I have a hard time getting mine above the...
You will be more complicated?
Yeah, I just
Because of an injury.
Yeah, I like that chronic dislocation stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's guarded, and that's one of the reasons why, I have been injured, I don't release control of my shoulder, kind of a feeling. So we might be able to put him on the table and see some neuromuscular stuff. In working with them, look at my quality of touch here, okay? So there's some things that are going on. One is that I am supporting her more toward the center, okay? So I'm not out here doing the movement. If the most complicated neuromuscular activity in the front line is this. Major activity in her brain. Her brain's going, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. You can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Yeah? If I go up here, it's much easier. Okay? If I add a little lift up here so she knows her arm is held by me, even easier. So one of our jobs is to make this process as easy as possible for our clients. It's not to engage in this complicated kind of battle with their... Y'all know what I'm talking about? Okay, so increase support. So the difference between this and this, harder neuromuscular, more potent. Easier neuromuscular, slightly less potent. Harder neuromuscular, but easier than before. Easier neuromuscular. Can you see the difference? Yeah? Harder neuromuscular, passive hand. Yes. Easier neuromuscular, less passive. Easiest neuromuscular, full contact. Even all the way up here, my whole arm touching her whole arm. Yeah? Not even moving my arms anymore, so she doesn't have any mirror neurons to go off of, right? He's not moving his arm. Nothing to react to.
Would that be boring potentially?
It can be boring if you're making it too easy for your client. Yeah? So yeah, I mean, for her, I could get into a neuromuscular level. There. Whole other free range of motion, right? So now she has to do all of the work herself. And I'm challenging her. She has to figure that out along the whole line by herself.
Which would be better body work for her? More effective?
Yes, it would be more effective for her. But it would be annoying as all hell for somebody else.
Sure.
What the hell? Why was the therapist they just were pushing on my hand with their finger? There, she did it, right? And I'm being very demanding. No, Maureen, this is what you must do. Figure it all out on your own. Yeah? But she likes that.
And would you have like full sessions of this, or in what case would people benefit the most, like with conversation?
Okay, there are a number of reasons why we learn this. First is to understand the capacity. Because when you're giving any kind of body work, you're going to be moving and touching people. So to know what's going on when you move and touch people, this is how we find out. So no matter how it is that you're moving and touching somebody, you're moving and touching them, and their brain is dealing with that. So if you know what their brain is dealing with, and you're connected to them at this level, it'll increase the efficacy of any kind of body work that you do, any style at all that involves moving and touching. Secondly, yes, this is the very most effective way of releasing compensation patterns, right? And changing muscle tone. This is much more relaxing than massage, if it's done appropriately. If you take a tight, stressed out person and you do this to them, it's not going to be more relaxing than massage, right? That's not the idea. But to develop this capacity within an individual over the long term is the idea.
What is, Maureen, do you have a physical sensation when you're figuring and letting go, and what, if so, can you describe that?
I don't know if I can describe it, but he did the example of harder for me or easier for me, and it was very clear the difference.
So I would like for you to do that and communicate with each other. How can I make it easier? How can I make it harder? Especially since the givers don't have the sensitivity necessarily, the receivers know exactly what's going on. Okay? So they can tell you if you're wondering, right? So let it be a verbal dialogue as far as what it feels like and how to change it. And if you know if I want to make it super easy, then I'm going to add squeeze on both sides of the joint. You know, make things up to see how can I make it easier.
Do you have any insight into that question? Like what that sensation is for you in your body?
I feel like, I know you're asking Tobin, but I'm going to try to answer it better. I feel my whole, more of my body, the harder it is, I feel more of my body actually engaged. Like when he was doing the pulling muscle, when he's doing this right now, it's like I don't have to be anywhere except my arm.
But if I back off, then she has to deal with her whole line and make all kinds of decisions along the whole line. I can localize her consciousness, or I can spread it out along the whole line.
So then I can feel my consciousness spread out.
And your question is about the feeling of the release?
And the figure in. Because I feel like I feel like I might know what this sensation is in my body, and I'm trying to get some. Being like,
Does anybody not know what the sensation? Think you not know what the sensation of figuring is in your body?
Figuring
Like I'm trying to figure out how to let it go. Everybody knows that feeling?
well, there's some work for me that feels like crack an egg on a trampoline, where it's like, woo, like it's like.
Crack an egg.
You know, when you're like in a ball and you're like kind of completely out of control of your body, and it like kind of tickles, and it's like kind of like you're like almost out of your body, kind of like watching your body,
Uh-huh.
and it's like kind of tickles is like super like joyful for me. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's like
Yeah, that's a
What?
deep release.
okay.
Yeah. This may be, we're working a little bit more on like the, how do I?
So this is more like sending a lot of information to the brain about how the muscle is starting to relax.
Yes.
Okay. But it's a lot of information because
Yes.
it hasn't been relaxed, and so you're making it like relax, relax, and send that information to your brain a bunch of times.
The first thing that we're doing is actually, you are relaxed right here. That's the information that we're giving. That's why we're testing free range of motion. We're not saying relax, relax, relax. That's a different kind of work, which we will do. This is saying, what choices will you make knowing that you're relaxed? Oh, I'll relax more. Oh, I'll relax more. Oh, and as I go along, if she really starts to actively relax, then I might be able to make a request. So that's the second stage, right? And I want to do this because I want us to move on. So, well, also, yeah, this position indicates that I got enough range of motion in her scapulothoracic joint to be able to have her arm rest nicely on her head like that. Okay? And then what I'm going to do, look what she's doing. That's the whole line, right? She wiggled her foot to get that. Is I'm going to come here, and pretty much everybody knows what's about to happen when you do this. Which means that they get ready for their neuromuscular response. Okay? So I just sit here and wait for that to go away. Yeah? Because if I just come in and start moving, she's going to start moving herself. So she lets go of the initial neuromuscular response, and then I test free range of motion. People will assume that I'm going to do this. Stretch. Okay? I'm not going to do that. Okay? So I have to show her body that I'm not going to do that by finding its free range of motion. And now I'm really moving the scapula, right? And I'm also noting that even though I'm finding free range of motion, I can see that her scapula is a little bit bound to her ribs, right? So we're starting to work together. And here's where a suggestion can come in. I know there's a juicy spot. And so if I just give it a little tug and say, hey, I'm going to help you relax right here, then she's going to relax. So here is shoulder, and we've engaged a little bit of ribs. Can you see that? So that's the next place that the shoulder range of motion goes. And if I want to emphasize ribs, I'm just going to push the ribs in toward the spine and then begin to move the rib cage. And what I'm doing is the ribs come into the spine, and there's a joint right there. That's the most intelligent joint in the body, in the sense that it's responsible for protecting the nerves that come out between the holes between the joints. And so it's very, very knowledgeable about where it is. I just push the ribs into the joint. Yeah? And that increases its awareness of where it is. And then I begin to pull. Just pull. So pushing the ribs into the joint at the spine. Can you see that? And then pull on that joint. So right now my body work is at the level of her spine. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Not where my hands are. And she's going to relax. And now I'm doing a little bit of pulling, because that generally works better for the ribs. And I can even massage the ribs into the spine a little bit. Here's a little shoulder. Okay. I'm exploring the free range of motion without the pull to show her what she's accomplished. Take it down further. Does now this start to look like it would feel good? If somebody is neuromuscularly activating in their arm, and you just can't figure out a way to get them to soften, this is the next step to the center. So this is more complicated, this is less complicated, this is less complicated, this is less complicated. This is, okay, we're skipping the arm neuromuscularly altogether and going straight for the center with some compression that's easier for people to understand. Can you see? But it's more effective to work as much as you can from the outside in the long run. Yes?
Oh, just so that they also know what's going on beyond what you're saying, of that I'm actually having to work a lot on releasing my neck right now. My neck is
Activating.
tender, activating scapula neck relationship.
So she's doing a lot of work in her neck. Which, yeah, in this particular treatment we leave for last. But she's, if maybe she wasn't doing so much work, I might not be able to progress as much because I would see it showing up as resistance in her neck.
Right, I'm taking care of it.
She's taking care of it for us. So all the way down to the bottom of the upper quadrant. Quadratus lumborum, connecting ribs to hip. And all of the abdominals.
So would you ever just start there? I mean, you do.
Sure. Absolutely. This is a lovely place to start. You can start anywhere that works.
Yay!
It's to show it's connected, so you don't have to. And now I'm going to go the other way. And integrative. Even more integrative. So now this is one of my favorite techniques. This saves so much time in a session. Once they have figured out how to relax, all you have to do is just wiggle everything and they'll go through their system and relax as needed, right?
Hamstring.
Huh?
My hamstring.
I'm skipping. I'm trying to say upper.
I'm telling them what's happening.
Oh, good.
He's integrating my hamstring.
She is integrating her hamstrings.
I am.
Yeah. So the other thing that the integrative movements do is as they do what I call the speed of life. Okay? So now in the speed of life, yeah? And this is what we call a functional kinetic chain. I'm stopping at the bottom of the upper quadrant. Can you see where I can keep going? That's next time, right? But this is a functional kinetic chain. Yeah? Yes. Yes, I do. I throw them off the table. I have specific techniques that you're going to take them all the way off the table. Okay? So this shows the body, hey, whoops. Don't usually do that. But that's good. Yeah. This shows the body, this is how you are when you're functional. This is how you are when you're functional. Yeah? Good? Okay.
So what if you find they couldn't do that? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say about like the softening, connecting that whole chain. I mean, you can have, like you were saying, you can go core to periphery. Like you can have like a really bound forearm that's just not responding to what you're doing, and then actually go into the core and then find that whole functional line and find all the softening in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wait, you said going backwards, kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah. So finding which direction is going to work for you.
Backwards,
But you
forwards,
said something
middle,
about-
spread, up, down, doesn't matter.
Okay, but you said something about coming in from the periphery and...
The most potent, yeah? The most potent you can do is extreme periphery. It makes her do all of the work. Yeah? That's the most potent. If I can, it's a different line, but if I can get the neuromuscular chain, she has to work very hard in order to allow this to happen, okay? From here, or if I take it down a notch, now she's doing the neuro, right? So if I work in her free range of motion here, she has to release her entire line in order to respond to this. If I pull harder, I can pull her through it, but I'm skipping what she really has to do.
Why did you giggle?
Because it's hard and I wasn't paying attention.
I've just made her pay attention. So that's the hardest, but it's the most potent.
Okay.
And so you can't usually do the most potent work on a client right in the beginning. That would kind of.
Doing it in the way you just demonstrated, though, going up the arm and moving it slow, and then getting it, and then getting to that point. I mean,
Yes.
But
That's Maureen too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can. Ultimately, I want to check out how deeply did we facilitate the release by checking the periphery. I mean, this is great, right? And there's still more that we could do. Do you think you have some gunk?
Yeah, let's find out.
Okay.
I actually do my left shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes you want to open your line.
Do that other side, Maureen. Get it.